Now, I'd like to invite Laia and Eduardo. Laia Alguacil is a predoctoral researcher at the Autonomous University of Barcelona, currently completing a research stay with the LDDI team here at UBC. Her work focuses on higher education institutions, how they integrate digital technologies into their teaching practices. And Eduardo Rebagliati is the learning technology specialist at LDDI with a background spanning higher education, multimedia production, and technology ecosystems. Eduardo supports digital innovation across the Faculty of Education. So welcome, Laia and Eduardo, who are presenting data on education and AI, a Studio B podcast episode.
Thank you, Christina. Hi, everyone. Very happy to be here once again in TEC Expo presenting. So I'm going to share my screen now to get started. Let's see. I assume you see my screen, some mountains. Yeah. Do you see my screen? Okay, let me just adjust. Okay, can I get a confirmation? Do you see it? Yes?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so we have this presentation here today. I'm going to start just taking a few minutes to talk about a project that we've done at LDDI and how it connects with a project, a little presentation that we did with Laia, who's going to take over this presentation, and she would be doing most of it. So we're calling this Data on Educators and AI, which was a Studio B podcast episode that we recently recorded. So just to give you some background here at LDDI, among things that we do, including learning technology and learning design, we also do some innovation projects. And one of these projects was the launch of this new studio that we started, well, almost like a year ago, which is called the Studio B Discovery Lab. So it's a space where people can come, normally teachers with their students, and they try out some technology that we are displaying every couple of months. But just we also thought at the same time, hey, we can use that space to do some other types of projects. And one project that we came up with that we thought could be very valuable and a good way of using our resources, because we've been creating a lot of workshops and materials, a way of repurposing them, was to create a podcast. So we launched these projects that is called the Studio B podcast. We call it the Studio B podcast because it happens at our Studio B, the Discovery Lab. And we've been covering different things, different themes, such as the evolving role of technology in education, artificial intelligence, emerging tools, different tech coming up in the AI sphere as well. We discussed the future of education, and then things that are more connected to UBC policies and regulations and also ethics. And this connects to our In Focus year, which is the In Focus year 2026 on intention. How do we use technology intentionally? So the episodes normally focus on this approach. And as I mentioned, this is a way of repurposing content that we have been creating because we've been doing workshops on AI, many presentations on different media this year. So we also wanted to make sure that more people can access those. So that's how we started the Studio B podcast project. This is an image of how we set up the space, and we always keep improving the tech, improving the editing, different things. So it's been a wonderful experience. And these are some of the episodes that we have recorded. So we've done one on educators and AI, email safety at UBC, AI ethics, UBC AI policy, AI in music, which is interestingly one of the most popular episodes that we've had. And the most recent episode that we have recorded was with Laia. So Laia at the Autonomous University of Barcelona, they did our research, and she'll be explaining all these details. But we thought this would be a really interesting episode if we were to share these findings and just frame them in a way that could be an interesting or could have an interesting dynamic. So after checking out the research, we identified 5 issues from the results of how educators are using AI in higher education. And then we thought of also solutions. So it could be something practical. And we recorded this episode. So Laia created some really nice graphics as well. And throughout the episode, we meaning myself, Laia, and also Bremen, who's in our team, we review them, we discuss them, and we identify issues and talk about possible solutions. So this particular episode is a little bit longer, so it's kind of like an hour long. There's no time to see it right now. We'll be sharing the link with you in the chat. Maybe Bremen, you can help me with that. Put the link there so people can access it. But I'm going to show you a small fragment, a small piece of it. We'll see a few seconds so you get an idea of the feel and the vibe that the podcast has, and also how this particular episode was designed. And then we're going to go to Laia, who's going to be giving us like a short version of the podcast episode, just sharing some of the most interesting things. So I'm going to go to YouTube right now, which is a platform where we host our podcast. It's a video podcast, really. And we'll take a look. I'm going to take just like 2 minutes or something like that, and then we'll move on to Laia. So let's check it out. So this is the episode, and something that we do for all our episodes, we have timestamps. You can always go down and find easy ways to navigate the content. So I'm basically going to show you now the outline, meaning how we outlined this particular episode, which was identifying those 5 issues and then those solutions. So, okay, so the format of this. Oh, I think I didn't share the audio, so let me just share my screen again so we have the audio embedded. 1 second.
We could hear you, but okay.
Yeah. Okay, it should be fine now. You'll be able to listen to the audio. So, actually, I think it would be better if I show you the 5 issues that we identified. Okay, so we just quickly lay them out.
I think so.
Yeah. So let's begin by outlining these 5 issues that we'll be discussing. So issue number 1 is self-perception of general knowledge versus specific knowledge gaps. Issue number 2 is lack of training for technical and critical knowledge. Issue number 3 is questions of safe and confident use. Issue number 4 is changing student-instructor relationship. And issue number 5 is uncertain stances on academic integrity. So something that we did,
So we identified those issues, and then we have a discussion around them, also proposing some solutions. So I'll show you a little bit of issue number 1, and then Laia is going to be expanding on it.
So let's begin with issue number 1, self-perception of general knowledge versus specific knowledge gaps.
Yeah. So actually, the first question we ask teachers is how much they know about AI. So we ask the question, how would you define your knowledge of AI? And they had to identify themselves in a scale from 1 to 5, where 1 is the lower level and 5 is the highest one. But they also had like specific descriptions of what each level meant. And as you can see, the results kind of show that most teachers, about 70%, are between levels 4 and 5, right? Where 4 would be, I have knowledge to explain it, perhaps informally, but they have enough knowledge to explain what AI is. And then number 5 would be, I have knowledge to explain what AI is, not an informal context, but more so. They have enough knowledge to explain, like actually explain what it is, right?
So it seems like people think that they do know a lot about AI.
Right.
Brendan, what do you think about this graph?
Yeah, I think when we were discussing this and we kind of put together this graph kind of starts that self-perception idea that we talked about, that kind of was the guiding issue here, which is it seems like people have a pretty high perception of their own knowledge of AI.
So that's what you can expect from the episode, and I would recommend checking it out. Now we're going to move on to Laia, and she's going to give us an overview of what can we also expect from the episode. So go ahead, Laia.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. It actually helped me start a lot, so thank you. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen as well. And please let me know if you can see it properly.
Yes,
Yeah,
we can.
perfect. Great. So yeah, I'm just basically going to give a brief explanation of where the project comes from so that you can sort of get an idea. And then what we're going to do actually sort of tease you with some interesting data so that you can potentially watch the episode later if you're interested. And of course, we can discuss anything in the questions, but we're sorry that we don't have enough time to talk about all that there is to talk about because it's a very interesting topic. So basically, this data is coming from this project. It's called EduINA, which comes from like higher education and artificial intelligence, but the reference is in Spanish, so it might be a bit tricky, but it's okay. The project name in English would be Policy and Practice about Generative Artificial Intelligence in Higher Education Institutions or higher education teaching and learning in general. And why the project came to be is because when generative AI started to become more and more present, we noticed that most of the publications that we saw were more about like reflections of what was going to happen and what needed to be done, but it was not based on actual data because, of course, there hadn't been any time to collect any data. So that's why the project started. And we're actually going to show like actually data just from one of the objectives, but it has a lot more. So it covers, again, anything from policy and practice, from teachers to students, from the actual teaching programs, as well as the future work that students are going to be doing in the labor market. So it is pretty extensive. I can also share the link to the project website later if you want. But it is an ongoing project, so we still are not done. There's a lot more to come. So the data that we're going to show is about this specific objective. It's the first one of the project, which is to diagnose the knowledge, use, and stance of higher education teachers. And again, as Eduardo said before, what we did was sort of identify 5 main issues that the data were kind of showing and trying to come up with 5 solutions to not to be so pessimistic as just say the problems, right? Okay, so again, these are the 5 issues and then the 5 solutions. We kind of go through them throughout the podcast, so it's kind of hard to put them here. But what we're going to do now is just sort of show some data that relates to some of these issues. And I'm not going to repeat them because you already showed them in the preview of the podcast, so thank you for that. And yeah, the first issue is actually the one that we started seeing. So thank you so much for teasing that. The first question that we asked teachers, again, is about their knowledge of generative AI. And as we can see from the graph, so this would be like the lowest number, and this would be the highest. So it looks like teachers know a lot, right? Or they feel like they know a lot about AI. But then we started asking some like follow-up questions, and you'll see that the myth might be a little bit debunked. So we started asking, okay, so do you know the difference between AI and generative AI? And already the percentages seem to be a bit more different, so they're not so sure anymore, even though there is a big percentage that know very well or quite well this difference, and some of them know it like somewhat well. And some other follow-up question that we asked is, okay, we kind of laid down a few technical terms that can relate to AI, like algorithms, prompts, machine learning, deep learning, hallucination. Some of these terms might seem familiar to you. And we asked them, okay, how familiar are you with these terms? And now we see some problems happening already. These are ordered from like highest means to lower means. So we see that algorithms and prompts seem to be pretty popular. Maybe algorithms they know from different contexts, like, I don't know, social media, for example. And prompts, they're pretty common. Machine learning also, but then we start seeing some important concepts like hallucinations, which with 36% people never having heard about it, which is something to, consider. Or the large language models, about, again, 36% of teachers never have heard about it, which it is pretty important to know what it is to sort of understand how AI works, right? And then we ask them, so sort of the similar question to the knowledge, but this time with competence. So how they would rate their own competence with using AI for teaching and learning. And we already see that here the results are very, very different. We no longer see those big percentages within the green, which would be 4 and 5. We see a lot more teachers being here. So they are able to understand basic concepts and how it works, and they can use it creatively. Sorry. But when it comes to applying it to pedagogy and to be able to develop regulations, be it at the macro, meso, or micro level, which could be at the classroom level, the percentage is really, really low. So again, huge difference between knowledge and actual competence, or there seems to be a big difference between what they seem to know or they claim they know and versus what they actually know. Some other interesting data that this time it relates to the question of safe use. We asked them, do you use AI for teaching? And about half said yes, and about half said no. But then we asked, like, again, a few follow-up questions, and we asked, okay, but how often and for which purpose? So with the how often, so that it's not like a super broad concept, we kind of broke down the teaching sequence into like planning a lesson, doing the lesson in class, assessing, tutoring students, and doing activities with students. So that's what you're going to see in this next graph. We asked them, how often have you used AI for the specific parts of teaching? Again, planning, in-class, assessment, tutoring, and activities with students. And what we see here is that mostly they have never used it or have used it for some particular lesson. So even though about half teachers say yes, they use it for teaching, they don't seem to identify it with frequency in all of these like parts of the teaching sequence. So it might be that they have done it one time, maybe. It doesn't seem to be as consistent as these results seem to show. And then we ask them what teaching tasks they use AI for. So again, what for? And the most common seems to be adapting materials, followed by creating teaching materials, and then followed by creating assessment activities and assessment instruments. So it is a commonly asked question to state the difference between these two. An assessment activity would be perhaps to create a case study that they're going to have to review, or the statement for a project or something like that. And the assessment instrument would be the actual rubric to assess the assessment activity, if that makes sense. Then pretty surprising that we found out that the fifth one is to look for references, which again, interesting because it relates to the concept of hallucinations, which is common for AI when looking for references, but it is a concept that many people don't know. So interesting. And then you can take a look to see the rest, but I don't want to take too much time. Okay, another interesting one from a different issue is that we asked teachers, to what degree do you think AI impacts on the relationship between teachers and students? And these were the answers we got. So it clearly seems to be a concerning issue. Then there was like follow-up questions to see if it is like in a good way or in a bad way. But just so you know that it seems to be an important issue that is concerning teachers and it needs to be addressed. You can watch the podcast for more. And finally, to not take too much time, we asked teachers these two questions, which go hand in hand. We asked them, how do you interact with text generative AI tools, and how do you think your students interact with these tools? So we gave them, it was the same question, same options, but changing the subject. So whether like the way you interact with it and the way you think your students interact with it. And of course, we added one option for students, which is, I don't know, because you might not know. So these are the results we got. So the most common for teachers, how teachers think their students interact with AI, is they create a simple prompt and stick to the first answer. Whereas the most common for how teachers interact is they refine prompts until they get a satisfactory answer, and then they modify this answer according to what they need. So we could take time to go through all of them, but basically, we as a team said there is no better way to interact with AI tools, but there is definitely a more complex way and a more simplistic way, right? So we're not judging, we're just saying that some ways are more complex than others. And funnily enough, the students one is the more simple and the teachers one is the more complex. So the way we interpret this, also it was lovely to have Bremen with us, bringing in the student perspective as well. He was extremely surprised. You can elaborate on that if you want to. But yes, it was very interesting to see how they have this concept of students using AI, which might not be accurate. And we explored why this could be. So you might want to watch the episode for that or share your thoughts in the chat. We'd love to hear that. So again, this was just some of the data that we shared on the podcast and would be happy to answer all your questions. And if you see the podcast and then you want to chat about it in a different time, we'd be happy to hear your comments. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, both Laia and Eduardo. I will welcome everyone to ask the questions via chat or turning your microphone on, or any thoughts you would like to share. Okay, so I did have a question regarding the notion teachers have, or if they recognize the difference between AI and Gen AI in your data. Did you have like that distinction, or not necessarily? Like, were they able to clearly delineate the difference between the idea of general artificial intelligence and generative artificial intelligence, or you were just saying yes or no questions to that question?
Yeah, so we didn't actually ask them what is the difference. We just asked them, do you know the difference? And then, so that question came first. And then to make sure that they would answer the rest of the questionnaire with actual, like a good understanding of what the difference is, we then provided the definition and the differences. We did that both for the knowledge. We asked them to rate their knowledge, then gave the definition, then sorry, then the question about the difference, and then the difference, if that makes sense. But we didn't ask them to define it. Is that your question?
Yeah, and could they react once they could see the definition of both of them or not? Like, and
Like
what
change
were
their answers?
like, no, could they comment on that? For example, oh, I thought it was this, but then it was that, or could they expand on that idea?
Not really. No.
Okay, it would have been interesting
So
to see that.
yes, and there's a lot of things that once you look at the questionnaire, so of course it was a very long questionnaire, and we know that the longer it is, the harder it is to get people to answer. But so we wanted to keep it the shortest that we can, but there is a lot of data that when you actually look at it, you're like, we wish we could expand on this. And so we have like follow-up interviews. I'm not working on that objective, but some of my colleagues are. And what they're getting from those follow-up interviews is that when they interview the teachers who seem to know the most, they actually don't know much.
Incredible, thank you. Melody had a question. Were the results from the project that you found particularly surprising, or that changed your perception of how teachers are using AI?
Yeah, some of them we were sort of expecting because you do talk to teachers and colleagues all the time and you sort of identify certain patterns. But we noticed how important it is to get actual data to base, like to make our decisions and policies be informed on that data. Because some of them were actually very surprising. So when we ask about, okay, do you use AI for teaching? We didn't ask, do you use AI in your life or for research? We asked, do you use AI for teaching? And they said yes, like about half said yes, about half said no. If we had stuck to that question and not went to the actual what for or how often, we wouldn't, like, we would have assumed that they are using it a lot, right? Because it looks like it. But when you actually go into depth, it seems like it might be more of like an experimental thing. So it really is important. There is a lot also that we didn't get to show, but there is a question about does your university offer training? Which I think none of us will say that in 2025 there is a university that has no training on AI. I doubt it. And it was very interesting that about 40% of teachers said they don't know. So that was very surprising as well. It really kind of shows. Oh yeah, sorry. Am I still sharing my screen?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. It doesn't say that I am. I don't know how to stop it. Like if I go to share, it tells me to share.
I stopped
So,
it, yeah. I stopped it, yeah. We're
okay,
good now.
thank you. Sorry, it must have been bugged or something, but thank you for your comment. Um, so yeah, it really tells you the way that we're doing things and the way that teachers are receiving things, because sometimes you're really doing a lot of training, but it might not be seen like that way by the teacher. And so we were surprised by a lot of things.
There's a question about if the study was conducted here at UBC. Perhaps could you talk a little bit more about your university?
Yeah, sorry. So yeah, the study was not conducted in UBC. Sorry that maybe I was a bit rushed and I didn't explain that clearly. It is a study that is done in Spain. 6 different universities from Spain have participated in the study, and in this specific objective, for this specific data, it was about 700 teachers participating. All of them were teachers from university education. So all of them higher education, just not in UBC, not in Canada, in Spain.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions or comments?
I can see that maybe I pre-answered without knowing Sarah's question. So there's about 730 something teachers. I'm not sure like the specific number now, but it's somewhere in there. And their demographics, you mean like where in Spain or what positions? I don't know if the question is about that. But it is 6 different universities throughout Spain, so like north, east, west, middle, and south. And then one online university. And they're like pretty balanced out within like different areas of knowledge. We have like 4 main areas of knowledge, which is like social sciences, engineering, health sciences, and arts and humanities, and it is pretty balanced out.
And there's one more question. This study offers rich data and insights of using AI in education. How would you suggest that other institutions leverage these findings to develop actionable strategies? Well, that's a big question, but interesting too.
I love Allison's big, interesting, awesome questions. It really gets you thinking. So I would say that also I'm just a little like bracket. I'm doing my thesis on like digital competence of organization. So it's something that interests me, like how the organization can approach the different topics related to digital things in general. So I would say that when you're going to do something, it is always best to base it on like analysis of needs, if that's how you say it. So to diagnose what the needs and what the state of the situation, like your institution is at the moment. So first thing I would say, if you can sort of collect any data of what's going on in your institution, that would be the best thing. And then if you can guide, like if you're an expert on the topic, then great. But if you're not, which is okay, many leaders are not, and they cannot be experts in everything. So just like get some expert view, or just use some framework that can guide you through the implementation of AI, because it can seem as if it's only the tool or it's only the privacy issues, but there's a lot more that comes within the institution when you implement a technology that needs to be taken care of. So, for example, like an essential part of any organization is the people within that organization, right? So how are they feeling? How does AI make them feel? How are they handling this? What are their needs? Then again, infrastructure. So are people having the infrastructure they need? Are you doing like actual supportive leadership on this? So there is a lot to take care of. So I would say diagnose the needs, and reach out to an expert or framework that can guide you throughout the process.
Thank you so very much, Laia and Eduardo, for sharing this insights and sharing the podcast. With this, I think we're ending our TEC Expo 2025. So I would love for people to provide us with their thoughts. We're gonna provide the link to the survey over here in the chat. And with that, we finish our TEC Expo 2025. Thank you to all for your presence, and see you next year. Bye.